Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to look at two completely different ways to build a world. One is this massive, perfectly designed galactic empire. And the other? Well, it's a high school debate club. We're going to put this idea of top-down order up against bottom-up democracy and see what each one tells us about the other.
So, what is the link here? I know it sounds like a pretty weird comparison, but trust me, by looking at these two models, one built on this idea of absolute logical design and the other on just messy, passionate debate, we can actually uncover some really profound truths about power, about control, and what society is all about.
All right, so on one side of the ring, we've got this meticulously planned, futuristic civilization completely designed from the top down. And on the other side, we've got a simulation of our own chaotic, passionate, bottom-up democratic process.
So in one corner, you've got the Oort civilization. This is a speculative future where pretty much your whole life, your job, your place in society, it's all determined by your genetic code before you're even born. And in the other corner, we have the Princeton Model Congress, which is basically a reflection of our own world, where students are arguing with real passion about the very rules that shape all of our lives.
You know, this quote from the Oort civilization's own records, it really gets at how this whole system is built on this fundamental, intentionally designed tension. And that brings us right to the heart of any society, its ideology. What does it actually believe in?
So, every society, right, has this core idea at its heart, whether we talk about it or not. Is the main goal to enable things like fluid motion and growth, or is it to create these really precise, powerful structures that last forever? In this Oort future, they've basically engineered this massive split. You've got the Western Hemisphere, which is all built on function, things like cooperation, movement, harmony. And then you have the Eastern Bloc, which is all about form, corporate power, precision, and rigid structure.
Yeah, it probably does, right? Because this really abstract conflict, this fight over how a society should actually work, it's mirrored perfectly in the real-world debates that are happening right there at the Model Congress.
Just look at this bill right here. The students are arguing that unchecked corporate power, which is a kind of rigid form, is actually hurting the dynamic function of democracy in a free market. It's the exact same fundamental conflict, just in a different context.
And here's another perfect example. The desire for corporate precision and secrecy, that form, is clashing head-on with the public's need for government to actually work, to have transparency, which is its function. It's function versus form right here on paper.
Okay, so how do these big ideas actually become, rules, the laws that govern people's lives? Well, the difference between these two worlds is, wow, it's huge.
All right, so the Oort civilization, they have these things they call opcodes. Think of them as these fundamental, top-down, constitutional laws that lay out the absolute limits and the pure logic of their society. They're pristine, they're powerful, and they are handed down from on high.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. The students in the Model Congress are, when you get right down to it, trying to do the exact same thing. They're trying to write their own opcodes, but they're doing it from the ground up through all that passionate debate and messy compromise. I mean, just check out what they're proposing. These students are looking around, they're identifying problems in society, and they're trying to forge brand new, foundational rules to fix them. They're trying to write modern opcodes to regulate big industries, new technology, and even the highest court in the land.
So, in the Oort world, it's super simple. Power and law just flow straight down this clean, rigid ladder. There's no debate, there's no argument, there's just the code, and it gets executed down the chain of command. Simple as that.
But our world, oh man, it's a completely different story. Creating a law is this wonderfully chaotic, incredibly complex dance that's governed by all these strict rules of order. You've got speeches and then amendments to those amendments and motions to just stop everything. It's messy for sure, but it's designed that way so that every single voice has a chance to be heard.
Okay, so we've got the rules, but what happens when people don't follow them? This brings us to crime and correction, and we're about to see just how differently each of these societies thinks about justice.
And wow, the difference here is it's night and day. One system sees crime as basically a biological mistake that needs to be fixed. The other sees it as this incredibly complex issue, all wrapped up in morality and dignity and fairness.
So think about this. In the Oort civilization, if you rebel, if you step out of line, they don't see it as a crime. They see it as a flaw in your genetic code, a bug in your programming. So the punishment isn't jail. It's something they call sequencing correction.
They literally rewrite your biology to make you compliant again. It's incredibly efficient, sure, but it completely removes humanity from the equation.
And then you look at what the students at Model Congress are debating. They are grappling with these deeply, deeply human questions. They're debating compassion for people who are terminally ill, the morality of profiting off of someone's incarceration, and how to reduce harm for people who are suffering from addiction. These are not technical problems with easy fixes. They are profound ethical dilemmas.
This all leads to a really critical question. What does this kind of perfect, efficient society actually cost? What's the ultimate price you pay for that kind of flawless order that the Oort civilization is striving for?
Okay, get ready for this. In one part of the Oort world, a group called the Polarians has a social policy they call survival sortition. It's a policy where 90% of all children are deliberately neglected and just allowed to perish. Why? To make sure that only the absolute fittest survive.
I mean, this is the ultimate endgame, right? It's the idea of form and order taken to its most brutal, most logical, and most terrifying conclusion. It is order that is bought at the highest possible human cost.
And then you have to compare that cold, hard logic with what's happening in the Model Congress. The bills they're passing are about the exact opposite principle. They're overwhelmingly focused on protecting the vulnerable, on ensuring fairness for new parents or for disabled students or for workers. They are literally trying to write empathy into law.
So all of this leaves us with one last big question to chew on. When we look at our own chaotic, frustrating, and incredibly messy process for making rules, are we looking at a broken system that just needs to be streamlined into some kind of perfect cold efficiency? Or are we actually looking at the very thing, the debate, the argument, the empathy that protects our own humanity?